All right. So the meeting is called to order. In your packet here, you can see the proposed ordinance. The yellow highlights are things that we discussed changing at our last meeting, and those have been changed. It was previously sent to you. I heard no concerns about that, so I assume we're all right there. So the last thing I think that we need to hash out is the grandfathering clause and whether or not we're going to have it or not. As you folks know, I talked to the council and they said, you guys need to decide that. And so tonight, before 6 o'clock, we need to, I think, have a vote to determine whether or not we're going to have a grandfather clause, and if so, sort of what it's going to entail. That doesn't mean it has to be a unanimous vote; it just has to be a majority vote. And then we'll that'll be our ordinance that we will post and in advance of next week's public forum. So I'll just start and I'll just give you my feelings about the grandfathering clause. I think this ordinance should have a grandfathering clause for the south end of Moran-Cook Lake. And the reason for that is that the folks who have existing moorings down there put those in legally. They're not illegal. It's been well established. And I think, and as I said before, the very reason that we're sitting here is that portion of the lake. I think we need to be mindful of that. And I do think fair is fair. They've already established it. So the only thing that they wouldn't have to do that other people would have to do where there are no established mooring fields is put an application before the council to actually determine whether or not a mooring field is going to exist. All the other regulations, including the annual registration of the mooring, would still impact those folks. So that's the world according to Anthony Wilson. So I'll open it up for other discussion.
So Anthony, when we're talking about grandfather, we're not talking about just they're out of the realm of this mooring ordinance. They're just grandfathered into having the first right of refusal for the first mooring spot.
So the way I look at it, and I'm glad that we are naming this mooring field ordinance. So really what the ordinance in my mind does is it creates a process for creating a public non-commercial mooring field.
Yeah.
That is a public non-commercial mooring field, but it's already established. This process is more for places that don't have an established mooring field. And so I think we should recognize the fact that that mooring field already exists. It's established. The people who are there legally. And so they wouldn't have to bring an application to establish a mooring field before the council. However, they would be subject to every other aspect of the ordinance, including an annual registration of their mooring.
I'm supportive of grandfathering as well. I just want to make sure that we have that, that we need to still establish where those lines are in the actual mooring. I know it's in the southern half of mooring of Moran-Cook Lake. So I'm okay with that as long as we know that when you put this in there, whatever language you use, it's that there's establishes the actual, maybe creates the actual mooring field. And then the current participants are grandfathered as having spots and they must apply no later than X date or something like that. I'm good with that. I think that makes sense. They should have the right, first right of refusal. It's all good.
How many guys do you have that down? How many moorings do you have down there now? 12?
I have one.
No, but all of you guys.
Yeah, there are 12 that I count.
12.
12 to 14, I think.
And are those out of those 12 or 14, are they all actively interested in keeping their?
I have no idea. I would assume so. I think that the folks that I know, there are probably 6 that are within, the folks that I am aware of.
Right.
So, yeah, and then we talked about, the number of people and so forth, but everybody would have to, reestablish their renewals and everything. So all of the names would be present. This is something that we talked about.
Mike, I know there was a concern about, well, how do we identify these people? Has there ever been an instance that you're aware of where someone has come in maybe early in the season hooked up their boat to someone else's mooring and it's caused an issue?
Never. To my knowledge, no.
And how long have you been down there?
I have been down there since 2015. 2015, there were, I mean, some of the concern was that it's out of control and the moorings are multiplying and so forth, but there was, I don't know, there was a gain of 3 or 4 for a couple of years, and it got to the point where there was maybe 16 moorings. But the statement from the town was that there are 20 or 30 moorings and it's out of control. And
There was never that many.
there was never that many
So,
moorings.
so just anecdotally, I went down there several times over the course of last summer. I never saw more than 12 boats moored down there. That
I
was
think
the most
last
I've
summer
ever
was low. I think there were maybe 7 or 8.
Well, I know a few people that pulled their moorings once this whole,
Right, there were a few that, because we all
They came
got,
out of town.
we all got served violation notices, and a lot of people did take their moorings out. We were advised by the State Harbor Masters Association, do not remove your mooring, because once you remove it, although it's legally placed, you're admitting that you've done something wrong, and so we left our mooring in place under the advice of the State Harbor Master. Darren Granado was actually his name that we worked with, as well as Maine Inland Fisheries. So we left them there.
So from the grandfather perspective, are we gonna ask current moorings to have until whatever 60 days after this notice is to apply and verify that that's who they are? And prove that their mooring line is there, or is it as good as just saying, we're good to go, we're there?
No. Someone has to put in an application for the mooring field.
no, if it's grandfather, they don't.
Yeah, I think that's where the sticking point is.
If it's a grandfather, it's more of a, it's a.
No, it's my understanding that grandfathering is, if it's approved by the town council, then they will have.
Oh, well, we have to send this wording to the town council. If they approve our wording,
But we're not approving the mooring field right now.
We are not.
no. So what's that process?
So someone has to apply to the town council to put a mooring field in there.
Well, again, why I think the grandfathering clause would, that process would not apply to the people who have existing moorings if we include the grandfather clause. in the order.
The grandfathering states that you can't turn around and make a law for something that's already legally established. You can't overwrite that. That's what the grandfathering, my understanding, states.
I consulted with a couple of attorneys, and grandfathering, particularly in real estate law, never sticks. So they're saying be challenged to prevail if it went to court.
I don't know why it would.
Well, I mean, our attorney has looked at this.
Has he been asked specifically about the grandfathering?
I mean, he looked at,
Because grandfather came up recently, right?
he looked at this and, he raised no concerns about it.
Well, as I'm saying, I'm confused because I thought the grandfather was just for the individual property owners if the field was approved.
No, the grandfathering would apply to the existing moorings in the South Cove of Maranacook Lake. And maybe we need to be more clear in that there would not have to be an an approval process for the field that currently exists.
But they do have to show that they're complying with all of
You do
the,
have to comply with all the rules of the ordinance.
they have to document that.
Exactly, and that's the word,
I think.
and that's the word, not approval.
So
It's document, because for the record, I'm in agreement with the grandfather clause as well. But what we talked about in the last meeting was, Matt, you weren't here, but your question that you raised was, one, all mooring balls down there will be identified, who they are.
Yep.
They'll have a number on them. And there will be documentation presented to the town for the established 12, 14, or whatever it might be, of where it is, where it sits,
Where they are.
who it is. And that will be documented like it should. so that this will be memorialized if this clause gets approved by the council, that those folks that are existingly there will be grandfathered to be there. And going forward, this ordinance, they will be in compliance with 100% of this ordinance going forward. And if one individual in our mooring field violates some of the conditions that we've got in the ordinance, that they will be addressed through the harbor master so that that's the piece that I'd like to see that strengthens this clause if it does go forward, is that there's a grandfathering of all those existing in the South Cove, and they will document what that field is, and those names of those people using those mooring balls in those locations will be recorded at the town.
So you're saying though that they still have to apply for more field?
No.
I'm not saying apply, I'm saying they have to document. They have
They
to
have to
provide
show
documentation.
in order to be
Okay.
grandfathered.
So then the language here should be the harbor master shall create a mooring field in the south tip of Maranacook Lake. And the current moorings shall be grandfathered and have XX days to provide proof of.
Whether it's the harbor master or
whomever.
whether it's the applicants just putting that in, but they're there today legally.
But somebody there still has to apply for it, right? So you still have to create the mooring field.
They have to document that grandfathered ability
Yeah.
is in compliance with this ordinance. That's how I say it.
So they don't have to go through the application process, but they do have to provide documentation that they are within.
But within the mooring field, doesn't it establish how many moorings can be placed there and how many, what are
The boundaries.
the boundaries for the
Mhm.
mooring field? So we still need to they still need to create, somebody needs to create a mooring field
Mhm.
for that area. And so the question is, who's gonna do that?
They are, because they know the number of moorings that they've got.
Okay,
And
so
they
they
know
just,
that each one has to be 40 feet away from each other. So if it's 12, let's just say that it's 12 that's down.
Yeah.
Each one has to be 40 feet away from each other. And they have to adhere to the different setbacks.
Yeah.
They have to have the public access. They have to establish the fact that, which they do. So that is to your point, that record has to be documented.
right,
And that's the base of the compliance.
And there probably should be a date on that, just
Yeah,
so.
and the names of those original people that are gonna occupy those mooring balls.
Mike, what do you think is a reasonable, I mean, you're gonna be probably heading this up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're gonna establish boundaries and, and
And then
everybody,
spots.
yeah, and we can plot it. However, whatever the town council wants to see, we'll provide.
And what about, how much time do you need to do all that?
When's the ordinance gonna be effective?
Well, the ordinance is effective 30 days after its approval. So if the council approves it and they've said either they're gonna accept it whole cloth and approve it, or if they don't approve of it, then they're gonna send it to the voters. So it'll either take effect 30 days after the council approves it or 30 days after the voters approve it. The voters would not approve it until November.
So can we say that this grandfathered mooring field will show compliance by the time this mooring ordinance is in place?
What do y'all think about that?
I don't think that'll be a stretch. I mean, it's already in compliance. So.
But I'm-
Well, and I think what Lynn is getting to is what you mentioned, Mike. What are the boundaries? Exactly how many are in there and whose moorings are they?
Yep.
And who does he, Show that to.
However, I mean, if there are, say, 5 of us that are known, I would be willing to set and plot those moorings, but there are several people who I don't
just abandon them
know who
maybe?
they are, and they may be abandoned at that point. I mean, if they don't come in,
Yeah.
if they don't come forward, like, it's not up to me to go chase.
No, I agree with that. And I think what we would do is we'd just probably put out some messaging through all the different channels that we could. Just letting folks know that if you have a mooring in there, please come to the town office so that we can establish that, you're the rightful owner.
establish,
of that
adjust, comply, whatever it may be. So all of those names that would be there, and if there are any that are abandoned, then they should be identified.
And then what would that, the waiting, the people on the waiting list would go to take those over, or?
Right, well, the town, that's up to the town and the applicant. But if we establish a field of 10 moorings and are able to block them, and then figure out who those names are, we could probably come up with 10 of them, but we're not all related in any way. I just know that, I know most of the names, and I know most of them have been using this and comfortably taking, self-policing throughout. There have been no issue, to my knowledge.
I guess tangential to that is what Barbara brought up earlier. State law allows, and we're not regulating private shorefront owners, right?
Within 100 feet.
It's-
The ordinance is
The ordinance,
regulating
state
that.
law says you can't put any boat closer than 25 feet to shore.
Right.
And no further than 200 feet off the shore.
So it was my understanding, though, that you could not regulate who put a mooring between the 100-foot to 200-foot mark.
What I'm saying is Barbara can go out
As a
and
property
put
owner,
she
can
can
I
put-
put some moorings between, in that
100 to
freespan, the
200
100
foot
to the
zone.
200? Can I?
Where?
Yes,
Because
yes,
I
yes,
originally said, can
yes.
I,
Yes, Barbara,
Register for-
yes, Barbara, but at least as the language stands right now, it says existing moorings. So those moorings don't currently
but I know,
exist.
but I don't want it to be part of the mooring field. I want it to be part of my.
And that's the way you can get
private
around it.
ownership.
You
Because
can-
so I started out saying, could I be part of the,
Right,
Mooring
that
field.
threw me off.
but now I'm saying, I maybe don't have to be. Can I, if I put 3 balls out there,
Put two.
be,
If you've got 100 feet of frontage, you put two,
Yeah.
40 feet apart from each other, then no other boat can get in there.
all right,
That's the way the ordinance is
I
written.
actually had 2 balls, but one floated away.
Okay.
So you still got the
I gotta
mooring, all
buy-
right?
Yeah.
The mooring
Yeah,
base.
yeah,
So
Okay,
that's,
so
that's one avenue to protect your private shorefront,
Okay.
out between that 100 to 200 foot zone.
that,
The only problem would be if that became a navigational.
Well, that's what I was
problem
gonna
With
ask.
the boat launch and the slips along that.
Well,
backside.
and we said no closer than 100 feet.
100 feet, okay.
To a public,
you said,
Launch.
right, you said 100 feet to the boat launch, and you said the slips don't matter.
that's right.
It's the boat launch.
Okay, so I'm not trying to block, I've never tried to block the slips, so if I just put 2 out there,
Then that
halfway
covers.
between the 100 and the 200, but far enough away from the slips to not be a problem, then I can stop boats from being in front of my.
Yeah, I don't think there's any boats out in front of her place
There
anyway,
have
so
never,
yeah,
no,
sure.
there haven't been, but my concern is to keep it that way.
Yeah,
I don't
like,
blame you.
you do whatever you want, right?
All right, so as a private owner, I'm gonna do that.
Okay,
So the mooring field can't encroach within 200 feet of those balls. And I mean, it can encroach within those balls.
Within 40 feet
Right,
of the,
right.
Right.
okay,
well, if you stay
But
50
actually-
feet
but actually
in,
they
or
wouldn't.
150
right,
feet,
right.
Then-
Because I think now you're into the fairway,
So 150
you're into
feet
that
From
center
there
spot.
200 feet out.
there
Yeah.
and there. and
no,
then-
two,
So
two,
those,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
but
that,
with 2.
right,
they
right.
can do it,
So
but it's
it'll
kind
be
of
150
pointless, I don't
feet
think
out.
it's
Far enough from the, and then
common
here
sense
and here,
that
you
and that
don't
should
put a
stop
mooring
anybody.
in front of Barb's house.
Yeah,
I would be happy.
so she just puts 2 mooring balls out 150 feet, it's fine, right?
Sure.
So then the harbor master would not try to squeeze a boat in there.
Well, they could squeeze one in at 190 feet away, but it would have to be that swing radius, right?
Okay, but wait a minute, okay? Mike is marking the boundaries of this mooring field. Anything that changes from the original mooring field, then that has to go for an application process through the council.
Yes.
Correct.
So he's already establishing this, and it's not within her space, and it's meeting all the other criteria. So I see no reason to not grandfather the existing moorings as long as they can document they are complying with
Right,
the new mooring ordinance.
yeah.
Agreed.
Which again, I don't wanna beat a dead horse, but that was all of the ideas that we brought to the town council 2 years ago. We tried to just explain, we're trying to protect all of the lakefront property owners because that ordinance affected everybody. I think unbeknownst to the way that they wrote it.
Mm,
And we started pointing out, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? All of those folks are affected by this. So we should start this over.
And can I say something?
Yep.
To Dwight?
We do
I
have a
just wanted
public
to-
comment period at the end of this, right?
Oh, okay, I just want to say that the attorney did know about the grandfather, he had already redlined it and written it in the last ordinance, I just want to let you know that he was aware and wrote it himself.
It is worded different. Who are you?
I'm Miranda Ketchum,
Okay,
Dwight, our daughters went to school together.
So, so what do y'all think about this as some language? At the
Okay.
effective date of this ordinance, existing moorings in the South Cove of Maranacook Lake are grandfathered from the mooring field approval process. Otherwise, owners of those moorings must adhere to all other regulations within this ordinance.
mhm.
Would that still require? Is that clear enough where they still have to annual?
Well,
Application?
Well, we could put including annual registration.
I think it does, but the biggest thing that I think might be one other sentence, just to, and must document. It's the piece we were just talking about, Anthony, is, do you want to put it, must document the, the who and the where of the mooring field?
Can you say it again? Can you read
Well,
that?
What do you think this?
So I think saying otherwise owners of these moorings must adhere to all of the regulations within this ordinance. So, you have to register it
Okay.
annually, you have to put your name, on it, you have to put your contact information,
That's good for
so
me.
forth and so
what about
on.
the parking spaces and?
That's all, there's like municipal parking downtown's within a mile, so there's really no problem with parking.
Yeah.
But don't they have to, somebody have to submit that?
Well, we're saying though, that at the effective date of this ordinance, existing moorings in the South Cove of Maranacook Lake are grandfathered from the mooring field approval process.
Right. Provide, and then what was the rest of it, that they,
Otherwise, owners of those moorings must adhere to all, maybe you just take out the word otherwise.
Yeah.
Owners of these moorings must adhere to all other regulations within this ordinance.
and do we want to say documentation will be provided or not necessarily? I guess.
No, I don't really know that we need to get into the weeds of how the ordinance will be administered.
I mean, because it's still under the umbrella of the mooring ordinance. If they are not in compliance, then it will be addressed like any other mooring.
Correct, if they don't come in and register their mooring, then, and then there's a boat attached to the mooring, then they're out of compliance
Right.
with the ordinance, and they would be subject to that. I think the folks who are there, at least what I've heard, are agreeable to participating in the annual registration process.
Mhm.
And then they'll have a deadline that they'll have.
So who
to
will
do
make,
that.
so who's gonna be in charge of all this? Is it the codes enforcement or?
So the code enforcement officer will serve as the harbor master under this.
So that's who Mike's gonna submit or give his information to have on file.
Yeah.
I'm good with all that.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. I am as well.
So you guys want to take a vote and just memorialize you're supportive or not of the language as proposed?
Moved. The whole ordinance,
Say again.
the whole ordinance?
Well, I was talking about the grandfathering, but I assume that there's no concerns about the rest of the ordinances.
We want to do two motions, one for that and one to accept the whole.
Good idea, good idea.
Okay, so you
So,
you moved, I seconded. So you want to make a motion to accept the entire.
well, let's vote on that first. So is there any further discussion about the grandfather clause? All right, all in favor? All opposed? All right. All right. So do you folks want to make a motion to accept the rest of the ordinance as presented, or do you have any other changes?
I make a motion to accept the ordinance.
I second.
as proposed.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
This goes to the council,
So the first thing we're gonna
oh,
do,
the hearing. public
we're gonna have a public forum, and we will start publicizing that tomorrow. And we will post this document, and encourage people to come and ask questions, learn about the ordinance, offer input, and absent some game-changing input that you might receive, if you're still comfortable with it after that forum, then we will put it on one of the June agendas
Okay,
for the,
so that meeting with the public is May 16th at 6 P.M.
correct. We will now hear from members of the public.
Thank you. So, thank you for everybody participating in putting this together. I just wanted to say that out, as a citizen of the town.
Yeah.
And any of you who's known on the council. Two things I want to make comment on was, you guys were talking about lawyers and everything, and I think Brandon mentioned it, you guys know about it. When I was doing this whole process and being on the council, our lawyer, Phil, said, it is our ordinance. He will write it however we would like it written. So I remember him making that true statement. I don't think Andy was part of that when we were here. He said he could tailor it to wherever we want, and that's our ordinance. So just so you know, I think you guys did the right thing. I just think that's important.
With the caveat, it can't conflict with state law.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, but he just, I remember him saying that about any ordinances, it's your ordinance. The other piece of it is about, removal. As this process goes forward, where we establish stuff, we find an abandoned one. I plan on, as a courtesy, it doesn't have to be written anywhere, I plan on pulling those and getting them out of the water, because I don't think there's any value in leaving them there. So as we establish something, we find something that's abandoned, I plan on hooking onto it and getting it out of there, so it's nice and clean, set up and moving forward. That's just, I want to make that comment, that I think that's important, so as we move forward. I think we're gonna be good stewards there, because if something does leave, we plan on either asking somebody if they want to replace it from the waiting list, we can put them in there, and or we'll remove that. So I don't want to leave stuff in the lake, because I think it's important. I love that lake, and I want to keep it as clean as I can.
I do want to say too, I did talk with Kim Vandermeer, and he said that he has no problem with, you guys are fine there, and you've always kept the area very clean, and it's totally, it doesn't really have any relevance to this, but he did say the one thing he does have issue with, and that's his thing to have to deal with on his own as a private property owner, is the trailers that get parked there.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with you guys, so.
Right.
That's an overflow.
Right, it's the opposite of
Yeah.
of that. We're limiting trailers
Right,
by doing what we're doing.
so anyway, I just wanted to.
All right, well, Lynn's got a birthday party to get to.
Yes, she does.
15, my God.
So it is 5:29. How about a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, the meeting is adjourned.
Is there anybody on Marina Cook? Like, not, the